The International Climate Change, appointed by the UN, has told us that we have a very short time our CO2 emissions down by 40 to 70%. We must do this by the year 2050 to prevent the worst case scenario on climate change. We know that if we do not do this, we will not be able to hold our warming to an average of 2 degrees centigrade, which is about 3.6 Fahrenheit. If we allow emissions to continue unabated and continue to increase, I don't know if you heard, we're at over 400 parts per million now. Milestone record, unfortunately, for humanity. We're at 401 parts per million. If we keep going, CO2 levels will double by the end of the century, and we will be looking at global average temperatures of 4 to 6 degrees Celsius. That's average, much greater for our middle latitudes and by the poles. So there is some urgency, but we also know that it is possible to solve this problem. There are countries that are taking bold steps and are solving it. Over Denmark, half of Denmark's electricity currently comes from wind. This is a picture of an offshore wind farm that recently opened, and they have plans to reduce their carbon by 80% by the year 2050. Sweden also gets 51% of its energy from renewables right now. Mark Jacobson, also of Stanford University. You may recall I showed you slides last time of his solution project. He has a plan where every state in the United States can get to our goal of reducing our emissions without using nuclear power, using existing technologies, increasing efficiency. And so we know that this is possible. We just need the political will to get it done. So how do we respond to this situation? And I would say that our response must be based on love and not fear. Love of our home, love of our neighbor, love of our family. We don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. So thinking of our future generations, our children and grandchildren, and what type of earth we want to leave them. The Native Americans are very much leaders in speaking on climate change. I don't know if you saw the pictures of them camping out, a group of them on the White House lawn. There's beautiful pictures of teepees in front of the National Monument. Bob Clanderud, a Lakota teacher, said, "I believe in the spirit of all things." Pardon me. In the spirit of air, the spirit of water, the spirit of trees. Earth is alive, not objects. We're supposed to be stewards of each other and of the earth. So what can we do? Well, we all personal action. This is a very partial list and almost apologetically presented here to you because you are all doing these things. You are thinking about reducing and recycling and reusing. We are all carpooling and walking and biking and reducing our driving when possible. We work at making our homes and our offices more energy efficient. Something I want us all to remember, please, is to vote. This upcoming election is critical that it's a non-presidential election year, and we need everyone to turn out to the polls and look at the environmental record of our candidates and vote. Eating less meat. We've talked about doing our potlucks, right? With a meatless entree, making sure that we are thinking about living simply and reducing our consumption of things that are very carbon intensive. Talking to our friends and neighbors. Remember with the marriage campaign how we worked on conversations. This is very important with climate change also, and that we speak to each other and our friends and neighbors about it. And then mostly modeling stewardship. I'd love to see us work on getting community solar here at our church to be a model for our neighborhoods and what can be done. Dakota Electric offers an opportunity for us. For those of you that are Dakota Electric customers, it's called Wellspring, and the prices come down significantly. You can purchase a 100 kilowatt hour block of wind energy, and it is an additional 40-cent charge on your bill. So if you don't know about this, I would urge you to look into it. There's also through Excel a wind source program that is very similar. So we can help to support this financially by encouraging the use of renewables. Others are speaking up and demanding change, not able to wait and see what our government will do. Akila Saunders, Macalester College student who led our regional conference on climate change this January, chained herself along with hundreds of college students to the fence of the White House in an act of civil disobedience. She waited 4 hours to be arrested to let them know that Keystone is not okay, that we do not want this. This is not what we voted for. And a few of us stood out in the cold in front of John Klein's office. I'm not sure if he noticed, but we also needed to make our voices heard, and you may recognize a few. Heidi was there making signs, yes? So whatever we do helps to act within a community of like-minded people. So here at Open Circle, we've done some wonderful things. Much of it with Sam's leadership, with our community garden, with our native plantings, with our reducing water pollution, right? Water impact, with our rain garden. There are many more things that we can do here, and there are many, many groups that are taking wonderful strides. The Sierra Club, Minnesota Interfaith, Minnesota Environmental Partnership, Lakeville Friends of the Environment, just to name a few. But I would urge you to seek any group that is taking strong action and join them whenever you can. This is Earth Day at the Capitol. There were a nice group of us there, and it was wonderful to hear the governor speak that Minnesota has a plan. We are working on an energy plan to increase our renewables to 50% by the year 2030. And they will definitely need our support to make that happen. What are we waiting for? We know that we must act, or this is our future. We must act now to reduce our carbon emissions and reduce the devastating impact of human-caused climate change. We also know that individual actions, while very important and critical to this process, are not going to be enough to reduce greenhouse gases to the level that we need to prevent this crisis. So to keep emissions from doubling by the end of the century, we must take bold action, and that will help our elected officials take action. So how do we get a sound energy policy? What would it look like? This is a Belgium choir group. I'm just going to play a little of it for you.
We need to wake up. We need to wise up. We need to open our eyes and do it now, now, now. We need to build a better future. And we need to start right now.
You get the idea. That's a fun one, I like it. So where do we start? Money talks. Over 90% of prominent economists agree that we must tax carbon. Just like we tax cigarettes and alcohol, we put a price on the things that we want to reduce. We would use the power of the economy to leverage change. George Mankiw, who was George W. Bush's chair of Council of Economic Advisors, so very conservative advisor, showed this is a concept that is attractive to conservatives. He said the external costs of carbon should be borne by the companies that are responsible for the pollution, and that it will improve both the economy and the environment. It will provide incentives for companies and consumers to reduce their pollution and its costs, and to create clean, low-carbon sources and jobs. This is, some of you recognize, I'm sure, George Shultz, right? Former Treasury Secretary under Ronald Reagan. He also supports a carbon tax and the elimination of all subsidies. The man on the right is Mark Reynolds. He is the executive director of Citizens Climate Lobby, which is the group that I'm representing today. And there's George Shultz in the middle, and another CCL member, Dr. Peter Joseph, who are talking about the carbon tax and came up with a catchy phrase: this is the tax you don't have to pay. I want you to remember that. It's the tax you don't have to pay. I know we don't like the word tax. This is Dr. James Hansen, NASA climate scientist, now retired, who was telling Congress in 1988 that global warming has begun and that we must take action.
Deeper and deeper into an attempt to communicate, giving talks in 10 countries, getting arrested, burning up the vacation time that I had accumulated over 30 years. More grandchildren helped me along. Jake is a super positive, enthusiastic boy. Here at age 2.5 years, he thinks he can protect his 2.5-day-old little sister. It would be immoral to leave these young people with the climate.
So Dr. Hansen has come out of retirement and continued to the lecture circuit out of a strong feeling of moral obligation, something he calls intergenerational justice. So why do Dr. Hansen and others, conservative and liberal alike, believe that we need a carbon tax, or what we will call a carbon fee and dividend? Such a dividend, fee and dividend, would be a steeply rising fee that is placed on carbon-based fuels at their point of entry into the economy. Not downstream, but upstream, at the well, at the mine, at the point of entry. So at its original source, this would start at $15 per ton CO2. And there would be equivalent measures for other gases like methane that are also greenhouse gases. And it would increase by $10 per year. So $10 per ton per year increase. At $15 per ton, that would mean for you and I, when we went to the gas pump, we would pay an additional 15 cents for for each gallon of gas. This isn't really a tax, this is a fee, and you'll see the words used interchangeably, but it is really truly a fee because all of the money would not be collected and saved by the government. 100% of the funds would be returned to each American household. 2/3 of Americans would actually receive more money back than they pay in, than they would have for increased costs. So we would collect a fee at the original carbon source, give it back to the consumers so they can afford to pay the higher price for the gasoline and other goods that we obviously know will get passed on to us, the consumers. This would put additional cash into pockets to stimulate the economy, but it will also foster innovation in green technologies. If you have a product that has lower carbon source, you're going to be able to offer it at a lower price, and it's going to be favored. So industry leaders will instantly perceive a price signal indicating that fossil fuels are going to be more expensive than renewables. This will cause shifts in investments to renewable energy, so we're lowering the playing field between solar and natural gas and coal and other sources. This will make it more competitive for energy inefficient products. This will drive innovation. It will send a clear market signal And consumers will choose energy-efficient lighting, appliances. We will be insulating our homes. We will be replacing old furnaces that are outdated. And when we buy our next car, we're going to look for the car that's going to have better gas mileage or be electric. This will cause private capital money to pour into the clean tech industrial revolution, and it allows the market rather than the government to pick the winners and losers. So as a free market-based solution, this is something that appeals to conservatives. Now, some worry about this being a job killer, that it's going to totally destroy our economy. And that is just totally untrue, because there's 3 to 9 times more jobs in renewables than in fossil-based fuels. So, for example, wind right now provides 3,000 direct and indirect jobs in the state of Minnesota. One 250 megawatt wind project will carry more than 1,000 jobs over the life of the project. Solar, there are more than 100 businesses in Minnesota already. If we raise the solar standard to 10%, this will create over 2,000 jobs in the first year alone and $230 million in value-added reinvestment the first year in Minnesota. And that's from the Minnesota Clean Energy Jobs Environmental Partnership. The United States Department of Energy also predicts that by the year 2030, there will be over 1.5 million jobs in wind alone. There was a study done in California. You know, California is looking at a carbon tax. They already have cap and trade. They're looking at having a carbon tax. And REMI, Regional Economic Models, did a study and said that this would not hurt the state of California, that it would add jobs. By 2035, there would be 236,000 jobs and a GDP that would be up $2.5 billion annually. And they've done similar studies in Massachusetts, in places like British Columbia, where they already have a carbon tax, in Australia. They have seen that it has not hurt their economy. So another piece of this that is really, really critical, and another reason to tax it directly at the source, is that we have to protect our American companies. So we would need to do a border tax adjustment. So this would level the playing field between countries that have a carbon tax and countries that do not. And it would incentivize other countries like China and India to follow our lead. So any country that doesn't have one, we would tax their import, and then that tax would be rebated as a border adjustment fee to American countries that are exporting to countries without a similar carbon pricing system. Now, you may think that this is something that no business would want to have, but you need to know that Microsoft and BP and Exxon and others are preparing for it. They've written it into their plan. Here's a list of companies that were in this magazine. There was also an article in Businessweek, Bloomberg's Businessweek, where Exxon confirmed that they support a carbon tax. Shell and BP both have signed on. Part of the reason can be understood in that they know that coal is going to be the first to go with this, and they have resources in natural gas. So, you know, part of it is smart on their end. But I think they also see the writing on the wall, that this is coming, and therefore they need to have it be part of their game plan. So how are we going to do this? If we are going to have this as a solution, we must reach across the aisle. These are red and blue jumpsuits for a reason, okay? We need to join with our conservative friends and do what will be best for our future. There are no red and blue states. There's only the United States. We have but one Earth, and to survive and prosper, we must all work together to solve this problem. Citizens Climate Lobby is working on training us and others on how to talk to your representative and appreciate them for what they're doing. When we write letters, we tell them how thankful we are for something that they have done, and then we explain our concern and our wish, and always speaking to them out of respect. and not coming in angry. It's very, very important that we learn to talk to each other. We have to find that common ground. We must harness the power of money and markets for our survival. There is really no other way to curb emissions if they're free. I mean, we know the EPA is now going to regulate, we hope, greenhouse gas emissions. The Supreme Court just withstood that. But you also know, I think, that that is being fought in every state, right? There's objections to that and concerns. So this would, again, be a plan that hopefully conservatives would buy into. There's been reports done on our own state of Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes and 81,000 farms, that we are definitely in jeopardy with future climate change. Outdoor enthusiasts alone lend $10 billion to our state's economy annually and 70,000 jobs. So this is important to our own state's economy. So Citizens Climate Lobby is a grassroots, nonpartisan organization that is working. This is a picture from last year's international conference. I was lucky enough to be able to go. Dr. James Hansen said, if you would want to join the fight to save the planet, to save creation for your grandchildren, there is no more effective step you could take than to becoming a member of this active group. And here we are at the regional conference. We had our first regional conference here in January at Macalester College, and there were about 100 people in attendance. These are the hardy few that came out on the last day when it was 20 below zero and pretty bad roads. You'll see several OCC members. Did you recognize Mary or Karen in the front row? Several of us were there. So we are building the political will for a livable climate. We are educating members and others, and doing speaking as I'm doing with you today, and working on a political solution, because this is the equivalent to today's survival instinct. Without it, we will not make it. We are growing rapidly. This shows our growth from 2010 to 2013, and I just heard yesterday that we're currently at 179 chapters. We have chapters in every congressional district in Minnesota. We have chapters in Canada. We have chapters in Sweden. We are truly an international group. And this is one of the ways that we work. Again, we write letters to the editor. We do outreach. We have meetings with our members of Congress and others, and we write op-eds and editorials and try to get in good standing with editorial boards. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's been a number of articles in the Star Trib in support of a carbon tax, and that is largely due to the work of Citizens Climate Lobby members meeting with those boards and getting them to understand it. So how much is it worth to save our civilization? This is a quote from Jeffrey Sachs. It's been said that it would take roughly 1 to 3% of our GDP. Is it worth it? Is it worth 1 to 3% of our GDP to stabilize our climate and oceans and slow mass extinction? Is it worth it to make us a leader, to make the United States a leader in green technology, to decrease our dependency on foreign sources? Minnesota spends, $1 billion annually to import coal, right? Right here, we could improve our own domestic sources, increase our national security, have cleaner air, cleaner water without that mercury in it, yes, and make a better future. Our officials are telling us we need to make them do it. They need our support. They need to hear from us. They are not acting in a vacuum. They cannot do it alone. Make our leaders be the heroes we want them to be. It always seems impossible until it's done. This is a big task. We know this is not, I'm talking about tax with anyone, whether you call it a fee or a tax. It's not an easy solution to sell, is it? But we also know that it is our best solution to actually solve this problem. And so, whatever action you take, whether it be personal, in communities such as this one, or politically, I thank you for listening, and I hope you will stick around to ask questions and have a discussion of this. And if you would like to join us at our next Citizens Climate Lobby meeting, we always meet the first, for Dakota County, we meet the first Saturday of the month, and our next meeting will be at Lebanon Hills Regional Park. So thank you again for listening.